Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the MCX. Why? Because the best ammo was buffed in 12.12.30 right at the beginning, but as it's expensive and Peacekeeper 4 only, it didn't really make sense to look at it until later into the wipe cycle. Most people get their MCXs from the flea market, which varies quite a bit, between 50k and 90k for a full durability version. However, there is a Skier 2 barter and a Skier 3 cash purchase for about 95k each if the flea is running dry. Because of the relatively high rate of fire on the MCX, which is 800 RPM, we have to be a little bit careful about the durability. Many of the flea market versions are from rogues and raiders and so are not at 100%, but given I think this weapon is best used with a semi-meta loadout, it's worth grabbing a new one. Despite feeling sort of like an M4 in modding, and we will be comparing the two later, there's not that much that you can do with it. There are two barrel lengths. The long barrel has better recoil by 2%, the shorter one has 2 better on ergonomics. There are two handguards, with the long version being 1% better on recoil and the short being 3 better on ergonomics, and on suppressors the TLOK SRD combo is basically the best to use no matter what you're trying to do. The standard MCX comes at 66 ergonomics and 84 recoil with the long barrel and the short handguard. It also has the TLOK attachment and the 2-port muzzle already with it, which most people don't even bother removing on the flea either, so all you need to do is stick in the SRD suppressor to get it to 42 ergo and 64 recoil right off the bat, excluding the magazine. The budget build with level 3 traders from here would then be to add an RVG Black Foregrip, an OMRG pistol grip, a regular Colt carbine buffer tube onto the stock adapter, and a Kriss Defiant stock, costing 30,000 for the mods plus the suppressor at 35 to 40k plus the gun. So best case is about 115,000 before any mags and optics. It's worth mentioning the Raven barter for the SRD suppressor at Skier 4, so once you have the trader levels you can get it for about 30k pretty much whenever you want. The lowest recoil build uses the Mesa Crosshair tube, the PRS Gen 3 stock, the long handguard, the long barrel, the RK2 foregrip, and the TLOK combo muzzle, with the Grell pistol grip and the 2 Kriss sights for 1 ergonomics each. This comes to 43 recoil, the lowest possible, and a nasty 34 ergo. As usual, this can be optimized into the meta build by replacing the tube and stock with an advanced tube from Mechanic 4, the MOE carbine with butt pad from Peacekeeper 3, and the RK2 foregrip with the SE5. This now comes to 62 ergonomics and 49 recoil, which is much better, although we haven't added any mags, optics or tactical devices as of yet. There is a little bit of a range here to play with. If you want a slightly better ergonomics at the expense of a small amount of recoil, you can use the original short handguard instead to get to 65 ergo and 51 recoil, and potentially use the SI Cobra 2, which then comes in at 66 ergo and 52 recoil. Going the other way, you can get a bit more recoil reduction using the long handguard and the CQR grip, coming to 58 ergo and 48 recoil. Now, because of the high fire rate, I personally like using the higher ergo versions, in part because I think that using 40 round magazines on the MCX feels really nice. It takes 3 seconds for a 600 RPM weapon to mag dump, but only 2.25 seconds for one with 800 RPM. Using a 40 rounder brings that back up to 3 seconds, which gives you that decreased time to kill, but without feeling like you'll run out of bullets and have to reload before your opponent. The 40s for 5.56 are only -7 ergonomics, which is a good compromise given that even the best 60 rounder removes 16, but it's why having that extra slack in the original build still allows the gun to feel like we haven't compromised on ADS speed too much. Comparing the two builds, the 49 ergo versus 57 ergo version, i.e. once we've added the mag and then an EOTech holo, comes to 100 milliseconds versus 133 milliseconds, or 2 frames different at 60 Hz, which is not that much, but you can feel it when handling the weapon. 52 recoil also feels pretty similar to 48 to be honest, especially on the MCX, as you can see from the recoil comparison here. Next, we're going to understand why the MCX feels better than the M4 in CQB, which is important because the M4 has really fallen out of favour a lot since 12.12 when the recoils were increased as high rate of fire weapons took the brunt of the nerfs. Despite having the same rate of fire, if you build 2 weapons with the same recoil, here it's 51, the vertical recoil on the MCX is quite a bit nicer than that on the M4. However, do note that the horizontal is worse on the MCX. It's this fact that makes it feel more like an SMG than an assault rifle, as full auto over medium ranges suffers in this regard. Vertical recoil settles down over time, but the horizontal remains and is very difficult if not impossible to control. Now, this test isn't entirely fair because we're using M855A1 ammo in the M4 and AP in the MCX, which aren't identical in terms of their own recoil stats, but the broad idea remains the same, and the MCX has it worse off than the M4 in the first place because of this. That leads us neatly onto ammo. This is a huge driver of the use case for the MCX, but it's also the reason that I don't recommend it early. The flesh rounds do a decent amount of damage, so if you like leg meta, that could work with Whisper or VMAX, but it's an expensive gun to do it with. BCP is okay early wipe I guess, but it has issues with class 4, and you won't be able to mod the weapon either at that stage of progression. This leaves AP and M62 Tracer, not to be confused with the M62 version for the 7.62 NATO caliber. M62 most closely resembles M856A1 for 5.56, with the same damage but one less pen. Given M62 is slightly worse, accessible at Peacekeeper 3 rather than Peacekeeper 2, and weapons like the MDR simply exist for 5.56, I think it's a tough ask to use the MCX instead. You can buy the round from the flea though, so maybe there's a window in progression where it makes sense. Otherwise, AP is where it's at. Yes, you can only buy 90 rounds per reset. Yes, it's relatively expensive at $7.38 per round when you try to buy 90, and yes, it's locked behind Peacekeeper 4. But the thing about AP is that the stats are a compelling reason to use it over its 5.56 counterparts. 51 damage and 48 penetration is really, really good compared to 49 damage and 44 pen of M855A1. The extra 4 penetration is actually really important against class 5 armor, bringing the initial chance to go through from 30% to 65%, and what's more, the increased armor damage means that subsequent shots are increasingly likely to penetrate as well. Just as a point to note, 48 penetration is actually one more than even 7.62 BP, which is considered one of the best rounds in the whole game right now, with only 7 less damage. I've been working on an improved model for armor damage recently, and based on my calculations, the second shot from 5.5A1 should still only have a 50% chance to penetrate, whereas for 300 Blackout AP this jumps up to over 90%. The only thing to watch out for here is that with 51 damage you won't be able to 2-shot a fresh class 5 because of the damage reduction. This is possible with 7.62 BP at close range, but the increased fire rate might make up for it somewhat, depending on what your perspective is. All in all, I think the MCX is pretty good if you're using it at the upper end of progression with a modded gun and AP rounds. If you consider playing with it a bit more like using a comparable high-end SMG like the 45 Vector, it kills super quickly and gets access to much better ammo against armoured opponents than any of the traditional SMGs. While not ideal for longer ranges due to the lead required with its slowish round velocity, typically about 540 meters per second from the MCX itself, you can single tap fairly well because of the high return to center time off the gun. It's certainly decent, but I don't think quite good enough to topple the everyday use meta guns such as the various BP and M61 slingers, as they work well at basically all ranges and have the increased damage on their rounds to take out the broadest selection of players. That said, it's good fun, and we'll finish up with a few gameplay clips using the improved 12-12-30 AP round to see how it feels in action.
Man, you speak French?
This is what EU VoIP is like.
Ok, d'accord.
Even off take him in yet?
Fuck you.
Nice.
I'm kind of too close. Oh God. I got shot from where I really wasn't expecting to be shot. I feel like I'm probably better off just going this way. Got him. Okay. I just want to go underground. Over here. I don't really care to fight the PvP boys. Did he die? What do we think? I'm not sure if he died or not. It kind of looked like he did, didn't it? But I can't really tell. Okay, so we're hunting scavs. I need 2 more kills down here. I'm gonna let those guys up there chill for a minute rather than like rushing. I'll go back up there in a minute to see if we got a kill.
Зачем, блядь,
Oh.
чё?
Yeah.
Вроде никого.
Okay. There's one. Okay, now it sounds like there's one spawned down the other end. Okay. Must be somewhere else then. Okay. Okay, fine. This kind of looks like the dude who was at the beginning. It does kind of look like him. What he was wearing looks similar to this. Heavy now. Thanks, man.
Нет никого.
Please die. Would you kindly die? I feel like this guy was the first guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm kind of interested to find out. Oh, maybe we really hurt him. Oh, I see what happened. It was the same man, but you see the heavy bleed? I think we nearly killed him. I kind of thought that was a person. It sort of looked like a person. RVG, I'm a big fan of. RVG would be my alternative. If I wasn't going for this particular one, then we'd be doing RVG. Alright, through we come.
Нормас.
Stream explained the bug already a few months ago. You don't need to buy and put in the filters? No, 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 you do not. I'll patch that, and for years people will still think it's going on. Might be patched already, no one is testing it anymore. It's like what we were talking about before. How often do you test this stuff? Thing is, you can easily test whether the filters make a difference or not. Which is what, if the bug got fixed correctly, that's what it would do. It would make the filters function differently. Or the amount of XP you get be different, depending on whether you're filter in or not. So you'd be able to test that very, very, very easily. Like, determining the bug in the first place was the hardest thing. Now it's very easy and straightforward to figure out if it's fixed, or at least fixed-ish. Next up, if you haven't seen it already, do go check out my video on whether budget builds for the SR25 and the M1A are possible post the flea market bans. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons. Hit all the buttons if you enjoyed the video, and as always, have fun in your raids.